All right, here in our last chapter, 16 for the semester, looking at nutrition in our last population, which is during adulthood, moving into our older years. So similar to our other ones, we're looking here at the impacts of aging, the causes, the changes that occur during ages, and then some of the nutritional needs that will change, things to watch out for, and especially kind of wrapping up at the end, talking about brain health, brain development throughout our lifespan. So what does healthy aging look like? So actually the demographic and the trends that are being seen is that by the year 2050, it's estimated that there will be more than 6 million who are living past 100. So as our healthcare is advancing, our aging population is also being extended. As far as those 85 and older, this is actually the fastest growing segment of our population that's thought to double by the year 2040. People over 65 actually make up less than 15% of the US population. 35% of all prescription medications, hospitals, and health budget, though, are related to that population. So even though they're a small part of our total population, most of our healthcare budget goes to that population. More than 80% or more older individuals, so more than 65, have chronic conditions like heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, cancer. And many of these can be prevented or managed, which is allowing that lifespan age to increase. So if we just kind of look at some of the demographics, so again, all populations are increasing, as you can see. See here, thought by 2040, again, that our overall numbers more than 60 will be significantly higher than they are now, including those, again, 85 and plus, are thought to double. Again, if we look at where they're at now, again, as those continue to rise, that does impact our healthcare system. So budgetary and economic changes will need to be made to take care of this population. If we look at healthy aging, so the idea here, so again, by 2050, again, the number 60 plus will double. Over 20% of that population will be over 60 compared to where it's about 15 right now. Again, 80% or older will reside in low or middle income countries. Factors that influence this aging process, the environmental factors, assistive technologies, so like MedAlert and the bracelets and all of that, various housing options that are available, social networks and transportation that assist with this population. Then individually, though, things that influence them, so different changes that occur to all of us, various behaviors, comorbidities, so these are other conditions, and a lot of our genetics are important. So things that can promote a healthy aging, just encourage environments that are age friendly. Again, developing that transportation, being sensitive to this population, housing, etc. Improving the health, promoting long-term care facilities and programs, improving health systems to meet this unique needs of this population, and then just positive attitudes about the aging process. So what are the causes of aging? So beginning in adulthood, so beginning actually whenever adolescents complete their physical growth, which is around, again, maximum height about 19, so in that area. So nutrients now are used to maintain. So that growth, the height, all of that has at this point rather ended. So now we're just in the maintenance stage. And then the peak performance occurs at around the age of 30. And then essentially, unfortunately, it all goes downhill from there. It's just the rate at which that happens. So organs retain that reserve capacity. They maintain that normal function with a decreased cell number and activity. So again, we kind of peak out, and then that starts on the opposite side. Now, after that reserve capacity is exhausted, though, that's when the functions decrease. So we have reserve neurons, we have reserve cells, but at some point, as they start going away, we will see impaired function. So what's happening with aging is just a time-dependent physical and physiological changes to the body and structure. So this occurs normally and progressively throughout adulthood as we become older, and it's essentially all due to this slow cell death. So again, we're kind of in a maintenance stage. So then as cells start slowly and progressively dying, again, that rate of cell breakdown or death exceeds the renewal. So we start seeing a decline in total cells that ultimately reaches a critical point that function starts to deteriorate. So just looking at some of the physiological functions that start to decline. So nerve velocity, so just how quickly we can respond to stimuli. So more falls become more likely because we can't react as well. Basal metabolic rate decreases, so that influences our caloric intake. We don't need to eat as much. So continuing to do so can lead to a positive energy balance. Cardiac output, so the heart starts decreasing. And what's most impacted, as you can see here, is lung function. So the ability for the lungs to fill and just breathing capacity all start decreasing with age. So if we look at these causes, so mutations, so DNA over time just continuously gets bombarded with things that can mutate or change it, which leads to cell death. Oxidative radicals, so this is why antioxidants are helpful. They damage cell components, DNA, and other organelles. And these are just natural things that we're exposed to as we go through metabolism or just environmental agents as well. Different hormonal changes, especially thinking about like menopause and the changes in estrogen and testosterone in men. Proteins become glycosylated, meaning sugars get added to them over time, especially, again, diabetics or those with high sugar in their blood. All that sugar has to go somewhere, so it starts attaching to different proteins. Immune systems start declining, so we're not able to recognize viruses, so more prone to disease. Autoimmune, so instead of the immune system not working, it starts attacking its own cells that are normal cells, causing inflammation. Normal programmed cell death, again, our cells only divide so many times and then they die. So as that death rate is larger than the renewal, that cell number starts decreasing. Excess calorie intake increases the aging. So again, our calorie demand decreases as we get older. So if we keep inputting the same amount, that excess leads to issues with aging as well. So kind of the usual and successful aging. So to some extent, we can control how quickly we age. Again, we all age. It's just a matter of how quickly or how well we do it. So the expected part is accelerated by unhealthy lifestyle. So again, excess fat that puts more stress on the body, decreasing lean body mass. So again, muscle tissue mainly we're focusing on there, increasing blood pressure that stresses the heart, declining bone mass, which makes those bones brittle and more likely to break, and just progressively poor health. Now, on the opposite side, successful aging, though, that function declines only because we're growing older. So we're not doing anything to advance it. It's just allowing it to occur at its natural rate. We're not speeding it up. So again, a slower rate of that decline. The onset of chronic disease happens later than normal. That's successful aging. Eventually, everything does kind of start slowing down, but just how fast. There is this compression of morbidity. So just striving for greatest number of healthy years, the fewer numbers of illness. So again, especially as we age, we're just more prone to other diseases. So as a successful aging would be having as many possible healthy years. So if we live to be 80, 75 of those were in great health the last 5 years. not so great, that compression compared to only getting to 50 and then health starting to decline until we're 80. So again, just the ratio of healthy to unhealthy years. So what are some of the factors that can kind of affect this rate? So a few definitions. First of all, lifespan. This is the maximum number of years that a person can live. So the longest in this, kind of century or this time span, 122 years for women and 116 for men. That's the lifespan at this point. Life expectancy, though, this is the number of years the average person born at a certain time is expected to live. So just to put some numbers, not that these would be questions on a test, but the life expectancy currently for men in North America is about 67 or 76, sorry, and about 81 for women. And again, think about that compression. Only about 64 of those, though, are healthy years. So after 64, so from 64 to 76 or 81, typically health is significantly declined. But that does depend on genes, lifestyle, and our environment. So if we focus first on the lifestyle, so our food choices are very important, exercise, these all play factors in what that rate looks like. So if we improve our lifestyle, that can offset any family history that we have about premature heart disease, or we can make it worse, in which our lifestyle offsets the benefits of those longevity genes. So maybe we have family who typically live to be 90, but if we're obese and we smoke and we drink, we're not likely going to make it to 80. So again, we can either have healthy life choices that extend that, or unhealthy that are more likely to decrease that life expectancy. One of the couple of the diets that have been shown to have a good effect on the aging is this Mediterranean diet. So it's the lowest rate of chronic disease. So those in Okinawa, Japan, typically live to be 90 to 100. And this is the diet they, for the most part, consume, which is lots of vegetables and plant-based protein rather than meat. Healthy fats like the omegas, they have a lot of fish. So again, that moderate consumption of fish, but also limiting their alcohol use. And then again, less on protein from the meats, even lower dairy products, but especially lower sodium. Now, as far as the environmental factors, so income, education, availability of healthcare, shelter, and socio-ecological factors, all of these play a role, good or bad, in determining our aging process. So things that decrease the rate of aging, just the ability. So if we don't have money to buy nutritious foods, that will increase our aging. The quality of health care and also the willingness to seek it. So some individuals have great health care but won't go to the doctor. Again, safe housing, education. This is mainly for decision making. So the idea of being aware of the decisions we're making and making better decisions. Autonomy, and then psychosocial support. So having that available helps decrease that aging. So some of the nutritional needs during adulthood. So if we look at the dietary guidelines, a few that I've highlighted here. So those to especially pay attention to, and many of these we've seen in all the ages. So vitamin D and calcium, B12, very important. What's unique more to the aging population, potassium becomes more important, and dietary fiber is higher than the other ages we've looked at. Again, nutrient-dense foods become a bigger deal here because, again, our calorie needs go down, so the calories being consumed need to be packed with good nutrients in them. And then limiting, as in all diets, sugar, saturated fat, sodium, and limiting alcoholic beverages help decrease that onset of aging. And just a little tidbit here, people 65 and older that are in long-term care facilities, this is the largest group for malnutrition that we would focus on. All right, so again, as I mentioned a couple times, we kind of peak our performance here at 30. So after that, that total calorie need is going to start decreasing steadily. So our basal metabolic rate starts decreasing over time, which means we need fewer calories to keep up with our energy demands because we're not as active and not as burning as many. So there's a need to reduce the calories that are needed for those who are 70 by about 100 to 150. So again, if we keep that same calorie intake, that increases cholesterol, fat, all of that, that increases the aging process. Exercise, of course, can help with that. So it can slow or reverse the reduction in that lean body mass, like the muscle, but also that allows more calories to be consumed. Protein should increase during adults. We mentioned this earlier in the semester whenever we talked about proteins. So again, as we age, we need more proteins. The body is less able to absorb them, so more need to be taken in to preserve that muscle and bone mass. Factors that can cause inadequate, again, limited food budget where proteins can't be purchased. Meats are typically more expensive. Is our teeth and dental. A lot of older individuals start losing their teeth, so then it's harder to chew the meat. Lactose intolerance increases as lactase enzyme activity changes as we age. But then also excessive protein is a problem too. That can decline in kidney function because of all that extra urea the kidneys are getting rid of from those amino acids. So again, it needs to be increased, but not to an excessive point. All right, and this is just kind of looking, we'd seen something similar to this with whenever we looked at pregnant women and those that are breastfeeding. So this is looking at the aging population. This is looking, first of all, at men, and then we'll look at women. So you can see the ones that need to increase as we age, vitamin D particularly, and along with calcium that helps preserve that bone mass, but then also vitamin B6. The other ones, these others actually need to decrease. So chromium, this was one of the minerals we didn't really focus on. Chloride, fiber is going to be changing, and then the linolenic acid. These are actually decreasing in age, with age. Then if we look at women, very similar in women. Again, the first ones, the linolenic acids, fiber, chloride, iron, though, actually, as you can see here, for women, this one's unique to women. It goes down significantly for women as they start to age. So they can actually have iron toxicity. So decreasing the amount of iron, again, chromium goes down. But then, as with men, calcium, B6, and B, and vitamin D increase as we age. Now looking at our carbohydrates, fewer than 1 in 10 follow the advised amounts for whole grains. So we get lots of carbs, but not a lot of whole grains. So we need to shift to those complex carbohydrates. That helps to improve our glucose control to keep our blood glucose normal so that those proteins don't get glycosylated. Fiber helps reduce the risk of different cancers and heart disease, helps lower cholesterol, minimizes constipation that can then also lead to hemorrhoids. Again, with all groups limiting those added sugars to less than 10% of our calories per day. Water's important, just like with infants that are really sensitive to dehydration. Older individuals, many fail to get enough water, so they're in a constant state of dehydration and electrolyte balance. That is caused because a lot of them kind of become insensitive to the thirst sensation, their body telling them they're thirsty. Chronic disease causes water loss, or just intentional to reduce the frequency of urination. So urination increases as the bladder starts relaxing. So instead of having to go to the bathroom all the time, older individuals stop drinking as much so they don't have to go as much. And then a lot of medications increase that fluid output, which causes dehydration, and that can all lead to disorientation. Some of the mineral concerns, again, we kind of mentioned these in the figures, but again, calcium and vitamin D, again, those need to be increased to prevent the risk of osteoporosis. Again, iron is important to keep up with to keep from having ulcers and hemorrhoids. Zinc, decreased absorption as we age. That leads to lower taste sensation and immunity. Magnesium, a lot of this is lower as we age, so that causes bone loss, weakness, mental confusion. Again, excessive sodium leads to that hypertension, osteoporosis, and hurts the kidneys. Now our vitamins, again, that we kind of mentioned, so folate, B6, and B12. So B12 absorption declines with age, so many require some type of supplements as we age. Vitamin E, that intake is usually short of the recommendations. This is one of the ones needed for our antioxidants to prevent those mutations and free radicals, so it increases cell damage that leads to increased aging. Carotenoids, those lead to the retinoids that help with our vitamin A, so they're linked to eye disease, so a lack of these causes cataracts and macular degeneration. Poor fruits and vegetables, again, provide those carotenoids and other phytochemicals and antioxidants. So again, they protect against a wide variety of conditions. So increasing those fruits and vegetables are important.